Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So for today's video I wanted to participate in the Eyeshadow Superlatives Tag. This was created by Hot Vegan Hannah and Catherine B. Beauty. I first saw Sophie Alexander do this and I saw the video where she did it with her palettes, and that is the way I would like to do it today just because I do not own any single eyeshadows, and if you haven't seen any of my videos, I am obsessed with eyeshadow palettes, so I thought this would be really fun to just go through. Some of these superlatives were pretty hard to choose for, but I am pretty happy with the choices I made, and I can go through and share them with you all. So the first superlative is most likely to be president. And for that, I chose the ABH Soft Glam palette. So I'm sure most of you know what this palette looks like, and the reason I chose this palette is just because it is a nice staple palette. I feel like it's been around for a while and it's still a lot of people's favorites, and I think it would just make a really good president if that were the case. It's pretty neutral, subdued, but you can still get some really nice looks out of it, and I just think it is a good staple palette to have in your collection, and it would just be most likely to be president. Next up is most likely to be famous, and for that I chose the beautiful Shellz Peach Chameleon palette. So here is what this palette looks like on the inside. So you get two matte shades and two beautiful duochrome shades. And the reason I chose this as most likely to be famous is because this is not a brand that I've heard a lot of people talk about, but I feel like they deserve so much more recognition than they get. And this is in no way sponsored by them or anything, but I do have an affiliate link with this brand. And I was honestly debating not choosing this palette for that reason. I didn't want you guys to think that I was choosing it purely based on the fact that I have an affiliate link with this brand. If you are interested in anything, because I do earn a small commission if you use it. But I truly think this is such a great palette and it deserves much more recognition than it gets. And the formula of it is so nice, and these duochrome shades, particularly this one, is just so absolutely stunning, and I love it. And I know people are really getting into indie brands lately, at least the YouTubers and people on Instagram that I follow. So I just felt like this one is really up there to become the next big brand. Next up is everyone's BFF, and for that I chose the IBY Beauty Wonderland palette. So the reason I chose this palette is because I feel like it has a little bit of something for everybody. It has lighter neutral shades, a few darker neutral shades, it has some neutral pops of color or some neutral shimmers, and then some more pops of color for the shimmers as well. And I feel like this gives a fairly good variety within the palette, and it seems like it could be pretty universally used and enjoyed, and the formula of this one I find is really easy to work with, so I just feel like it's something that everyone could enjoy, and for that reason I chose it for everyone's BFF. Next up we have Best Eyes, and for that I chose my ColourPop Midnight Masquerade palette. So this was one of the prompts that was pretty hard just because I love what my makeup looks like with so many of my palettes, and I feel like a lot of them could be voted best eyes, but I chose this one specifically because a lot of times when I wear this palette I get compliments on my eyeshadow and it just feels really good, and especially with this duochrome shade up here, it's kind of a pink to green shifty shade, and whenever I wear that shade it's just gorgeous. I absolutely love it, and yeah, for that reason I chose this one for best eyes. The next superlative is most likely to be interrupted by Kanye at the VMAs. This one was very difficult for me to choose just because I honestly wasn't really sure what the criteria was for this, so I just kind of made something up in my mind. I've never watched the VMAs and I just really had no idea. But for this prompt, I chose the Pacifica Purple Nudes palette, and I kind of went on the lines of an underrated palette gets overlooked a lot, and I haven't heard really anyone talk about this palette. It is newer in my collection, and I think it is pretty new to the market, but the Pacifica brand in general, I feel like I don't really hear people talk about their eyeshadows. So I felt like this was a pretty overlooked brand, a pretty overlooked palette, and that was kind of the way I went with this superlative prompt. But I absolutely love this palette. I think it is so good, and I love the color story of it. I'm a huge fan of purple eyeshadow, and the few looks that I've created with it so far, I have really, really enjoyed. Alright, next up we have Best Couple, which was another one I had a little bit of trouble with, but I kept coming back to these two palettes, so those are the ones that I chose. And these are the Shared Planet Tiger palette and Nomad America's Parks. So taking a look at both of these individually quick, this one has some really nice, just staple neutral shades as well as some gorgeous shimmers. And I thought this just was a really nice base palette to pair with other ones. And then we have the Nomad America's Parks palette, and this one just has more pops of color in it while still having a few neutrals that I think go really well with the Shared Planet Tiger palette. So looking at these side by side, I just feel like they go really well together in my mind. You get a very wide range of from the neutrals to the more colorful shades, and I feel like the tones just go really well together in these palettes. They're a little bit more earthy toned within both of them, so I just felt like these paired really well and they made a really great couple. Alright, next up we have Class Clown. And for that superlative, I went with my I Heart Revolution Oh the Places You'll Go palette. If you've seen some of my recent videos, you know how much I adore this palette, and I feel like it's just so fun and colorful, and it's Dr. Seuss themed, which is usually a bit more on the fun side, so I just felt like this fit really well for Class Clown. You get your fun pops of color, some really nice shimmers, and yeah, just a palette that I seriously enjoy using, and I have so much fun creating looks when I do reach into this palette. Next up we have Life of the Party, and for that I went with my Rude Cosmetics Roaring 20s Neons palette. So I chose this one for a couple reasons. One, the Roaring 20s, I feel like it's just all sorts of parties and dances, the jazz clubs with the flappers, and I think for that reason alone it fits really well to the Life of the Party theme. But then you look on the inside and you just have all these fun, bright, colorful shades that I feel like just really light up your eyes, brighten them, make it just so much fun, and I feel like this palette just really embodies this Life of the Party prompt, and this is another palette that I really do enjoy. It is a bit out of my comfort zone, but I still absolutely love it, and I just have so much fun playing with it. Next superlative, we have most likely to start a YouTube channel. So for that, I went with my Glitter Realm A Whole New World palette. So my reasoning for this palette is I feel like it just has a really fun color story. When I first got this palette, I was just so inspired to reach for it. I could not put this down, and I feel like this is not a super well-known brand or palette, so that's why I thought it would be the most likely to start a YouTube channel. And I feel like on YouTube you see more of the more colorful, fun sides of palettes. At least That's what I typically tend to do for my YouTube, and this palette gives you that, as well as also having some neutral options for those days, those videos where you just want to do like a get ready with me for the day and do a more neutral look. I just feel like this gives you that variety, and it just has seemingly endless options of color combinations that it would make a very fun YouTube channel. Alright, next superlative is most opinionated, and for that I went with my Sigma Untamed palette. So when I was thinking of this superlative, I didn't really know what I wanted to choose, and for some reason this one just kept coming to mind when I was thinking about it, so that's honestly the whole reason I chose this. But if I had to try and dig a little deeper, this is a palette that I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with. I think it's really pretty, but when I look into it to create a look, I get a little bit overwhelmed, a little stuck. The shades in here are really pretty, but I feel like they take a little bit more care to work with, and I just feel like for most opinionated, it's not like a super easy palette to work with. You get a little bit of a struggle, but in the end, I do really enjoy the looks that I create with this palette, but this is just the one that kept coming to me for this superlative. Alright, then our last superlative is most likely to live alone with 10 cats. This was another really hard one for me, but I ended up going with my Be Bella Cosmetics Sweet Sunflower palette. So this palette is kind of a palette I feel can stand alone, and I feel like Live Alone with 10 Cats, a standalone palette, it works really well, and I feel like I wanted one that was more on the neutral side as opposed to some brighter colors. That's just, I don't know, kind of what I thought of when I thought of this superlative. I, again, wasn't super sure what to choose for this one. This is just the one that kind of called out to me as the right choice, so that's why I went with it. Just a nice staple palette, but it is one that just kind of is good on its own. It can be used with others as well, but I do enjoy just using it by itself, so that's kind of why I chose it for this prompt. So those are all of the superlatives for this video. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys would choose for any or all of these. I would be really curious to know. Let me know what you thought of my choices, and let me know also what else you would like to see from me. I love doing eyeshadow themed videos, so if you have any other suggestions, do let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads, and with all of that said, I will see you in my next video. Bye!